What is going on, guys? Rewinds here, and in this video I'm going to be bringing you guys my review for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Manga chapter number 28. So this might be a decent length review just because this was a pretty dialogue heavy chapter, and we had a lot of setup come into play for the events that are about to transpire in these next couple months. So we did have a good blend, of course, this month, I want to say, of some action going on towards the end of the chapter, as well as, the whole strategy build up and like just everything going on and who is on Boruto's side here for this whole thing that's going to be happening, and just Shikamaru breaking everything down, as well as Koji, Inojin having their interactions. So we had a pretty mixed chapter in those regards, and so yeah, we're going to talk about that. The chapter itself was titled New Powers, and we did have a solo cover of Sumire, who's holding Boruto's sword pretty close, kind of like she's hugging it, and it's honestly a cool cover. I really say this pretty much every month, and I'm going to keep saying it until we get a really, really bad cover. But most of the time, Ikimoto makes some good, chapter covers. I think the one I had seen maybe a couple months back that some people had mixed reactions to was that one with Jura, and that was because of the pose Jura was striking, because I know some people weren't a fan of that. But, that aside, I think most covers have been met with some pretty solid reception without it being mixed. So, the trend continues. So the chapter kicks off with Inojin working on the new jutsu that he was told to master in 2 days. Koji ends up saying that it's almost complete, and Boruto says that he's impressed that he's actually about to get this down in a day. So Inojin replies back with a little scowl towards Boruto, saying that he's only here for Himawari and Konoha, and that he hasn't forgiven Boruto's betrayal or accepted him as a teammate. Boruto says he hasn't accepted Inojin either, so to remember that if he makes Himawari cry even once, that he'll shave that ridiculous haircut off until he's bald. That was a funny line, Boruto hitting him back with that, because, obviously Inojin doesn't know the truth about Boruto, but it's just funny that we're even acknowledging, we got Ikimoto over here acknowledging through Boruto how bad Inojin's haircut is. So that was a pretty funny line, probably the funniest part of the chapter. Boruto then disappears using his flying Raijin, and Inojin pretty much is saying to Koji what gives him the right to say that, as he's the one who messed up the Uzumaki family completely, but Koji just remains quiet. We then cut over to Mitsuki, who is in the interrogation room now. He just showed up. Konohamaru gets dismissed. Sai then actually checks in with the sensory unit for any transmissions for Konohamaru in the last few minutes. But they say that he hasn't had any usage these past few minutes, and his last transmission was just for a regular checkup the previous night. So they're in the clear for now, but Sai definitely suspects something, and I think this is pretty in line with his character, and I think that's good writing to have Sai question the possibility of a transmission going on there. So Mitsuki's interrogation begins pretty much with Kubo leading that, and Kubo saying that Mitsuki was the closest to Boruto during the escape. So before we really get more on the interrogation, we cut to Sumire giving Boruto his sword back with the changes that were made. So apparently the sword material is the same, but its shape is altered for maximum strength and cutting ability. Boruto is also told that the blade is set to automatically maintain his Uchiha blade jutsu Hagoromo once he has activated that jutsu. So already some convenience there. And Sumire also says that it absorbs a small amount of Boruto's chakra, but it allows, the jutsu to keep running without Boruto having to give focus to it, and it should run till his chakra runs out. So good chakra usage. It doesn't use a lot according to Sumire, and also makes it more convenient for Boruto to just hold that jutsu without having to actively think about it. So that's just a convenience thing right there, but Sumire put it in work. That's a very useful change. And this next part also that I'm about to mention is also pretty nice. She says that if someone whose chakra isn't registered with the blade touches it, their chakra will quickly run out. So that's like a safety feature she designed, and that's in case, a foe takes it. So the only people on there that have the signature registered are Sasuke, Boruto, and herself because she's working on it. So, pretty limited group right there. She also mentions a special compounded material has been compounded into the katana. So, we don't really get more detail on that. I don't know if we're gonna find out what this special compounded material is gonna specifically do, or if that's just making it more durable, or whatever the function of it may be. But we didn't get any more expansion on that because after that we cut over to Shikamaru, who is talking to Shikadai about what's to come. And Shikadai snaps back at him by saying, "How could you forgive Boruto, the guy who murdered the seventh? How can you call yourself Hokage?" And if Boruto was the one to actually murder the seventh, this would be a complete valid reaction. And in Shikadai's eyes, that's what happened. So it is a valid reaction. So Shikamaru pretty much answers back to him by saying he swore to himself that he would be unbending in his convictions just like the seventh was. And he says that's exactly what he's still doing. Shikamaru says that he's sticking to his beliefs and making necessary decisions in order to protect Konoha. So that is what Shikamaru is doing, I mean, we know Shikamaru has a trust for Boruto, but at the same time, we also understand that the priority, as the Hokage, is to protect the village. And Shikamaru seems like he's going to, put aside any other, concerns the villagers might have in order to protect the village here, even if it means teaming up with Boruto, the guy who most of the village looks down on or looks at in a very negative light for, quote unquote, killing the seventh Hokage. So Shikamaru also says that Boruto's assistance is essential, and if Shikadai can't accept that he can leave to make his own choice, but he isn't allowed to tell anyone of the conversation they just had. Shikadai then says that he'd rather be ordered because Himawari is signing up for this, and because of that, he knows that Inojin and Chocho won't allow her to do this on her own, so that he says now, too, that he's willing to put aside, his personal feelings and all that towards Boruto to risk his life as a shinobi, if and only if he's given the order by the Hokage. So that's kind of his way of justifying it, rather than just testing his morals. So, cool little, character tidbit right there by Shikadai to see where he stands on everything. I do like that we got that interaction. And I hope we keep getting more of these with the new Inoshikacho as well. There's definitely a lot of potential we can have, going with these guys. So, cool stuff. We then cut over to Inojin asking Koji why he won't give more details if he knows what's about to happen. Koji gives an example of if Inojin had actually squared off with Jura, if he knew he would die. Would he have done that, or would he have frozen up or hesitated? That's the point Koji makes, and that's a good point, to make against Inojin because, I mean, realistically, a hesitation there could have been a big difference in whether Himawari had awakened that power if Inojin had actually not died in that instance. So Koji is right there. So, another thing is that he says the moment he tells someone the future he saw, it changes to a degree. So he says it's better the fewer people know about it. The singularities that do know about it greatly sway subsequent developments, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. The more singularities there are, the more future, complex branches happen. And that makes it even harder overall for Koji to predict, and ultimately might just end up ruining their advantage of the presence to begin with. So, Inojin pretty much just asks and responds to that if that means that going with the flow will lead to a good direction for the time being. And Koji says that he never knows for sure, but relays what he feels is vital. In this case, it's more so like the battle will rely heavily on Boruto and Shikamaru, but they've gotten that necessary info from Koji. So Koji explains his, point of view here pretty well to Inojin, I feel. We then see a page of Himawari dead in Inojin's arms, and another one with Ada also presumably dead and captured in a tree. So Koji pretty much tells Inojin, you ought to agree though, right, to change any future where Ada or Himawari die, no? And I think he's making a good point. Those two are very pivotal. Ada, especially with her abilities, with what she can see and whatnot, I feel like that is a very big thing on her side of stuff. And then Ada aside, I think with Himawari as well, to have the Nine Tails power going for her, that would be a big asset to lose. So, and Himawari kind of just hits home also in like the whole conversation here with Inojin because that's who Inojin cares about the most. So it just makes sense. But I also kind of get this feeling, throwing in a line like this. He's saying change any future where Ada or Himawari die, no, right? So him saying that makes me wonder, what if part of one of these futures where Himawari dies, the way out of it, what if it's Inojin dying in like a sacrificial way? I know he's already sacrificed himself for her once, but in general, what if that's something we see again, but this time Inojin actually stays down? Just a possibility and some food for thought there. We then cut over to Shikamaru contacting people through a non-official transmission. He says there's two main criteria for people to be included in this. First is that you aren't hostile to Boruto regarding the upcoming battle. And the second was, it coming through Inojin's new jutsu, mind transmission formation. And Shikamaru pretty much says that he also expects some hindrance attempts from Konoha towards Boruto, so that each person that's on this line will have to be alert and support Boruto as well. Inojin's new jutsu is then explained as a step above the regular mind transfer because it can be used as a receiver and used to sense the vibration of objects in their vicinity. So the key is to identify Mamushi's wave frequency, and Shikamaru says that him and Inojin will take care of that by relaying the locations, and that there's a overall limit to how many people can be linked through this mind transmission formation jutsu, and that's the other factor that drove their selection for this operation. So the people that have been selected for this mission and are on like this off the grid line over here that Shikamaru has going on are the Inoshika trio, Himawari, Ada, Damon, Kawaki, Amado, Boruto, Delta, Konohamaru, Sarada, and Mitsuki, and then Shikamaru himself as well. So that's the group we got going on, which seems pretty centric to the main characters of the series we have right now. So makes sense, and the criteria is explained well enough to the point where it makes sense why other people wouldn't be involved that are in the village. So that's a good way of writing some of them out. So I think that this is going to be one of those things where everyone's going to have to be willing to work hand in hand with Boruto, and I think most of them won't have a problem. I'm just curious to see how Kawaki is going to be moving right now, so that's going to be something. But moving forward, pretty much Shikamaru then goes on to explain Mamushi's abilities off screen, and then we have a page where Mamushi is actually pulled up now, and he asks two random guys in the village for the location of Ada. Inojin identifies him, and so does Shikamaru, and Boruto gets told by Koji, and I don't know if I mentioned, but Koji's also on the line, of course, but I think that should have been an obvious one, right? But Koji tells Boruto what the nearest keyhole is, so Boruto uses the Flying Raijin to teleport there. Shikamaru says, damn it, that's several days before what was forecasted, and Koji says, fate has already begun shifting. Kawaki says, just you wait. Damon says, don't worry, sis, I won't let him touch you. Team 10 is given the Sector D to protect. Team 7 is given Sector B. Whereas I believe Mamushi is pulled up right now in Sector C. And Ada is currently housed in Sector A. And everyone gets informed that Ada is the main target of Mamushi. So Mitsuki's then asking Shikamaru if he should force his way through the interrogation. But Shikamaru says no, and to just take advantage of any chaos opening that happens as time goes on. So Mamushi's mentality, pretty much what we see is that he's feeling free to kill villagers, but he can't destroy buildings because that would piss Jura off. But killing villagers doesn't seem to be a problem. So that's kind of the mindset. Boruto pulls up on one of the Mamushis and slashes him. That one's pretty much, I think, taken care of. Boruto then tells the villagers to get lost if they don't want to die. Boruto is then pretty much fighting against the numbers game against some Mamushi, and it is kind of tough for him because they are about the same strength each, despite them being clones. They all end up releasing a fire style attack on him, and one Mamushi comments, "Hey, stupid, you're setting the buildings on fire." So this is already like a sign that we're already seeing a little bit of an intellect decline in them, but we'll see how much worse it gets as they decide to split up more. So then what happens is that Boruto is then seen absorbing this fire style jutsu by activating his karma, and that's pretty much where the chapter ends off, with Boruto saying, "Gah, I just can't get used to this weird itchy feeling when I absorb things." So this is a very big thing in itself too, because that means him and Momoshiki worked out some form of deal. But Boruto having this karma now is a huge, huge power up, because Boruto's base form was already crazy strong enough, but now for him to be moving with the karma again, that's going to be a big boost, and that might put him in a realm above Mamushi for sure, if he wasn't already there to begin with. But should help with the numbers game. We'll see how it pays off, and I'm interested to see what kind of deal he did end up striking with Momoshiki, if it was the actual give the body thing, or if they maybe found a different compromise. It's going to be interesting to see. But all in all, really good chapter this month. I actually think this month's chapter, even though it ended with some action of the last like 5 to 8 pages, and before that was just a lot of setup and explaining, I really do like those aspects when they do that, because it just makes the story better. I do think it was better than the last 2 months chapter. So I think we're slowly starting to pick up some steam. The last 2 months, I think I had the chapter in that ballpark of a 7.5 to maybe a borderline 8. So this month, I would say I would give the chapter an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10. Definitely a step up, like I said before, in comparison to the last 2. So hopefully we keep trending up from here. And I definitely think we will, as a lot of the setup has been placed. So now it's time to see what actually happens with Mamushi versus the people that are going to be guarding the village. We know we got like a solid about 10 people involved in this mission at least. So it should be interesting to see where we head. But I'm excited to see that. Definitely let me know your guys' thoughts on everything in the comments below. Did you guys like this chapter? Did you think it could be better? Did you think it wasn't good? Did you think it was great? Just let me know in the comments below. Love to hear your guys' opinions on that. But that's going to be it for this one. If you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you guys are new. And as always, I hope you guys have a good day or night whenever you guys are watching this video. I'm Rewinds, and I'm out.